let's move on to our next session. In session 2, we're going to be talking about the Texas Triangle. The session is hosted by General Assembly, a pioneer in education and career transformation, specializing in today's most in-demand skills. The leading source for training, staffing, and career transitions, they foster a flourishing community of professionals pursuing careers they love. The session is intended to help attendees understand the different players in the Texas tech ecosystem, where it's heading, and which sectors are hot right now. So let's get up on the stage our speakers. We have Mark Nathan, Christiana Yebra, Heath Butler, and Aisha Lewis. Welcome all. Thanks so much. We're excited to have you.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone. I am Gabriela. I am from General Assembly Houston, and this is a panel in collaboration with the Austin Startup Week by General Assembly. We are a technology education company, so if you want to learn something more in terms of technology area, digital marketing, or user experience design, go to ga.co. Now I will not take more time because we have just 45 minutes, and I would like to welcome our panelists, and they will take the lead. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriela. So hi, everyone. My name is Aisha Lewis. I'm the Director of Strategic Programs at Notley, which is a local Austin-based social impact investing organization. Joined with me are Mark Nathan, based out of Austin, Christiana Yebra, based out of Dallas, and Heath Butler, who's based out of Houston. And I'll let you all introduce yourselves for a minute or so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better. Mark, do you want to start?
No, ladies first. Christiana should go.
I felt it coming. I felt it.
I know you did.
Some Southern hospitality, I guess. My name is Christiana Yebra. I'm also totally stunned that no one called me Christina. So thank you so much for reading that extra A in there. I'm currently the CEO of Vouch, which is a social matchmaking and dating app that was launched, grown, working on some fun things right here in Dallas, Texas. Previously, I have a background in healthcare, building and selling healthcare products. I do a little bit of everything. I'm obsessed with healthcare. I'm obsessed with tech. I talk about things from dating and ghosting and all the terrible things that happen on dating apps, all the way down to what's happening in the healthcare space. I also own and operate several other businesses that just cater to my love for events and digital activations. And this month, I'm launching a company called Filter My Brand, which actually helps brands create custom face filters and AR filters for Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok.
Very cool. All right, I'm going to go to Heath. Mark, you seem like you want to go last.
It's up to you. Heath's much more interesting.
Good morning. My name is Heath Butler. I am a partner at Mercury Fund. We're an early stage venture capital fund, been around 15 years. We invest in Seed Plus and Series A companies in the mid-continent. And those of you not familiar with the mid-continent includes everything but the West Coast and Boston and New York by our definition. I focus on B2B SaaS opportunities and B2B2C marketplaces and managed serviced opportunities. And I also manage the firm's network platform, which includes all of our fractional executives and service provider partnerships, as well as community and corporate partnerships. And my background is in business development, sales, marketing, strategy. And I've been an advisor, investor, and co-founder in some cases of entrepreneurial opportunities over the last 20 years. So really excited to be here today.
Great. All right, Mark, to round it out.
Well, before I get started, I think Heath's being very, very modest. Heath was the absolute #1 business developer doing work for Insperity way back when in Houston, and he's been very, very actively involved in the angel community and really the startup community all across Houston for as long as I've known him, which is going on a long time. But with that, as I mentioned, I'm Mark Nathan. I'm from Houston originally. I've been in Austin for about 6 years now, very actively involved with the startup community in both places, and frankly, getting a little bit more actively involved with other places like Dallas, San Antonio, and Fort Worth. I believe very strongly that Texas is an ecosystem unto itself. That's what we're talking about today. And for that reason, one of the reasons I'm on this panel today, is because 5 years ago, I started the Texas Squared Startup Newsletter, which collects all of the major relevant news, opinions, and events for across Texas. And I put it out every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
All right. So wanted to ask the first question, and I don't know more enough about Dallas, so wanted to talk to you, Christiana, about this. But what is it that you would say is most unique to the Texas startup community, and maybe to Dallas specifically, and how would you compare it to other regions or hubs around the country?
Well, I'm 5 years into the startup community, but it feels like a lifetime. It's really evolved over even just the last 5 years that I have been involved. I think what stood out for me here, and I really didn't have much to compare it to. I literally was working overnight shifts in the ER where I'd never even heard the word startup, and then ended up at a really fantastic event that was produced by Product Hunt as part of Dallas Startup Week. So I know we're part of Austin Startup Week right now. Great place to start. Great place to land, great place to get connected and just figure out maybe what pathway to take. So I was welcomed into the startup community by many of the community leaders who I would find out were really important figures in the startup community, not just some of the behind the scenes organizers, or they were the key people really doing great work here in Dallas. And so for somebody who had no background in the startup community, didn't really know where to start, I felt really welcomed by the community leaders here, and they're still friends now, which is really fun for them to have watched me grow up here in the startup world. I don't think it's unique to Dallas. I think, joking about Southern hospitality, I feel like there's a huge collaborative effort here in Dallas, and it doesn't matter what industry you're a part of. If someone doesn't know somebody, they're really excited and interested to connect you to that next person. And I've really adopted that as my own. I'm really paying attention to things like real estate, transportation, the food industry, and obviously tech here in Dallas. And just in the last couple of years, it's really impressed me to see how industries are adopting more of a startup mentality. They're bringing in advisory teams. They're building, there are some innovation hubs that are coming out of these large companies. The first startup I was ever a part of was acquired in less than a year by a legacy health system. We're talking 100-year-old legacy health system to invest in a less than a 10-month-old startup. As part of an innovation arm, they were seeking out events like that Product Hunt event, or events at the Capital Factory, and looking for who was doing what and how they could get involved and how they could extract some of that information and collaborate. In some instances, it's worked out better for others. For us, it was really an interesting initiative to be a part of, to be the first kind of in that structure of a deal. So all to say, it's really interesting to see larger companies like AT&T, Toyota investing and finding out and sourcing information from the startup community in a collaborative effort.
Yeah, that's great. Heath, what about you, and Houston specifically?
Yeah, thank you. Houston, it's a two-part answer. One about what's unique, and then I think what's really compelling and what we're excited about here in Houston. From a unique standpoint, by far, I'd say Houston is just light years ahead of some other communities in other states as it relates to our medical center. It's the largest medical center in the country, and they're doing great work at TMCX under the leadership of Tom Luby and Lance Black and John Reale, JR, working with the TMC Venture Fund. Their accelerator programming is just by far the best. If I use the phrase farm the table platform for plugging qualified entrepreneurs into the 50 plus hospitals and medical organizations that can really guide a startup down the path of helping them understand if what they're doing fits, where it fits, and what needs to be done to make sure it can be a viable business. And in some cases, help them understand when maybe they might go back to the drawing board and reconsider something else. For example, the key thing that they really help people understand is when a startup says, all we need are the nurses to do X, right? It ends up being a red flag, because if everybody got the nurses to do what they wanted them to do, we'd have a lot of unfortunate situations, because the nurses end up being the gatekeepers. So really having the medical organizations and the hospitals right there to help you understand what will work, how it needs to work, and what problem it's solving for them compared to what the founder may be thinking is a really good gem to have here in Houston, and we're pretty excited about it. I think one of the things that we're probably most excited about overall for the Houston economy and ecosystem is the investment that the Rice Management Company is making right here in the middle of the city with the Ion and the Tech District, which is really trying to do two things. One, it's a hub that tries to create some density in Houston being so spread out, but at the same time, they're really building collaboration and partnerships with the other sort of areas of the city that are creating, whether it be co-working centers or opportunities for startups to engage in those local communities, for example, with the Cannon. So there's really an opportunity to create this tech district that becomes the center, but also allows people to then work and collaborate in their communities. And that investment is going to be over $1 billion between the real estate mixed use environment to create that density, as well as all of the infrastructure that startups need. You know, Houston in the last 3 to 5 years since Station started in late 2016, Houston has created over 30 startup development organizations that are out there trying to collaborate, work together under the leadership of Houston Exponential to really bring all of this together. So kudos to the work that the Houston Exponential team are doing over there, Harbin and Serafina, and all the other people that are leading the startup development organizations in Houston. We think we're on the right path to doing some exciting things and having Mark right about everything going on in Houston a lot more.
That's great. And I love hearing about, Dallas and Houston, these major cities that are, a lot more spread out than Austin is, because I think that it's so, it really makes for a unique opportunity there, being able to collaborate and kind of create this hub, like you mentioned, and get support from all the different players, including local government, who can help support those types of efforts. And Mark, do you want to talk a little bit more about Austin, the city we love, and all of the unique attributes here that make it a good place to start?
Absolutely. Well, it just warms my heart to hear more about Houston. I was very involved with the startup community early on, and to see it thrive and grow the way it is, it's just absolutely stunning, and it's really wonderful to see. As far as Austin goes, a little bit of perspective, we're actually not that unique, and let me tell you why I say that. We have all of the accoutrements that every other city has. We have a great university system. We've got young, smart people here. We've got nice weather. We've got companies that are thinking about moving here or already here. We just have more of it because our real unique quality here in Austin is we have a head start. We thought about intentionally building a startup community, a technology community 20 years ago, and that's coming home to roost now. Years ago, when people were saying, well, there's a .com boom going on, how do we sustain this? How do we make this work? How do we make this happen for us? Austin, see, I'm already doing it. Austin intentionally, through our Chamber of Commerce, through other business leaders, and through several of the private companies, decided that they wanted to make Austin a hub for technology. The actual unique advantages Austin has is really the culture. It's really the same thing. It's the forward-thinking, progressive mindset that people all want to succeed. And I said on a panel just a couple of days ago, and I still believe this is true, that Austin's team sport is actually helping others succeed. We actually really enjoy it. And that really is true of all of Texas. Just as an aside, being from Houston, I've always had an allergy to Dallas. Well, the allergy has gone away. Texas is really a lot more collaborative today, and that's why we're having this panel. But from the perspective of Austin, I consider Austin, and obviously I'm very biased, the top of the second-tier cities. Keith talks about mid-continent investing. Austin is the tip of the spear when it comes to mid-continent from that perspective.
That's great. That's great. So I mentioned earlier local government. I wanted to learn more about the kind of policies and policymakers and folks that you all have mentioned have really helped to propel Texas forward into more of a progressive startup mindset. Do you all have any interactions with these types of folks who are helping to move things forward for the startup community in this way? And kind of, I guess, what do we have to look forward to with kind of taking action in our own communities to make sure that our cities are continuing to be inclusive startup ecosystems?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. I'd say in Houston, what's really been interesting is that while, to Mark's point earlier, the players in Houston were trying to gin up a lot of the activity we've seen come to roost in Houston a little bit over the last 5 years. But for Houston, it was also the not being considered even in the top 20 for the Amazon HQ2 that really brought some of the leadership together here in Houston. And the mayor's office, the city of Houston, have been instrumental and encouraging and supporting and wanting to be a part of making sure that that the tech and the innovation economy in Houston becomes a fabric of why Houston is great and what Houston has to look forward to over the next 10 to 20 years. Specifically, there are a couple of things that I think towards the end of this year, going into next year, Mercury Fund has been a part of that you'll hear about, but I think it will speak towards opportunities to increase funding for things that Houston is known for, in the space areas, as well as inclusivity. And we're really excited about that. One of the biggest things is Houston's support of what's going on with the ION and what rights management companies doing that I spoke about earlier, and ensuring that the leaders of these various organizations are driving forward all of the things that we feel are necessary to make Houston great and make Houston thrive and leverage a lot of our talent and infrastructure that we have here. So folks like Harvin over at Houston Exponential, I know is on the phone with the city of Houston leadership, people like Andy Aiken all the time to help figure out what do we need, where do we need it, and how can the mayor help. The mayor's kind of often lending his voice to the term that Houston's working on creating the Silicon Bayou here, and we get excited about that. But it just shows his commitment to the effort, his commitment to do whatever it takes to make Houston thrive in this innovation environment.
Thanks, Heath. Christiana?
Yeah, what I've enjoyed actually most maybe the last 2 or 3 years is better touch points between leadership and government here in Dallas to local organizations and funding to back that, not just the conversation, but where's the money going? Also just recently did a big push for the census and realizing the lack of engagement from the community previously to showcase not only who they are, where they're coming from, but the true diversity of Dallas. And so doing a big push for that, it was nice to see that communities here were investing in spreading the word, knowing how important that funding would be for the next 10 years. Things like the Mayor Star Council and the Dallas Entrepreneur Center and the DEC network as a whole have been doing a lot of initiatives to really tie the needs of the startup community with that of, or really being able to demonstrate and be a megaphone for the issues in the startup community as it relates to funding and innovation. One of my favorite projects to spin out recently was the Dallas Innovation Alliance, which really just took a common sense approach to making Dallas a safer place to live, work, play. Something as simple as creating lit arches for people to walk safely between a very interesting startup, hub here in the West End to a parking lot not too far away, making sure that there were safe avenues for people to get to and from work, or even things like scooters and it's been interesting to see how cities are collaborating to things that obviously have been quite different lately, but prior to and continuing forward, it's been interesting to see which organizations are standing up and also their messages being received by groups like the Mayor Star Council, Dallas Innovation Alliance, and large organizations as well.
And Mark?
Well, our mayor here in Austin, Mayor Steve Adler, has been a champion of the startup community and specifically a very close friend of one of our major hubs, Capital Factory, for many, many years. He's definitely gone above and beyond helping startups grow, bringing new startups to town. That's just the actual government. I also have to make very clear that our Chamber of Commerce, led in business development efforts by Lee Christie, have made leaps and bounds more activity for bringing startups and, more importantly, keeping startups. I believe the role of the government is to protect its citizens and help them grow. So I think of the government as almost like a platform. So mobility and smart city initiatives, which Austin is very, very big on, is really helped our ecosystem grow, specifically to the point where even before COVID, Austin was considered the #1 telecommuting city in the United States. Those are the kinds of things, those are the kinds of progressive thought processes and policies putting in place that will help a community grow over time.
Great. And Christiana, you touched a little bit on this, but wanted to hear from you all how you have seen the events and kind of the current state that we're in with the pandemic and the racial justice uprising of this past summer affect your work in your city. And kind of, I guess, no one can predict the future, but what do you see happening moving forward in your communities, and how can we all collaborate to basically make sure that Texas has a voice and is continuing progression in the right direction as we move forward?
Well, I run a dating app full time, and that's built on virtual connection. So I've tried to figure out how to pair my love for networking and translate the scalability of living in a very virtual world lately. And I've taken advantage of that. And initiatives like this, chances are I probably couldn't have made it to Austin at 10 o'clock to participate in Austin Startup Week, but now I can, and it's we don't bat an eye at it. I've tried to leverage personalization through virtual connections. Following up, I think, is a big thing. I don't want to just see you guys one time and never hear from you again. So you'll be hearing from me, even if you're kind of allergic to Dallas. Just a little bit. But, I've been trying to leverage the virtual nature of essentially the world at this point to scale my own opportunities, and then look at how I'm affecting my users and what I'm allowing them to do. A big part of the last couple of years have been connecting young professionals to opportunity. And a big part of that was diversity and inclusion. And I love that. I don't love the circumstances in which a lot of these questions have been raised, but I do enjoy the fact that we are now placing a larger emphasis and then using virtual tools to be more inclusive. A big initiative actually here in Dallas is making sure that all students actually have great access to internet. Who can't be virtual, and then have our students, basically running old school broadband through their homes. How are we making sure that they stay connected to schools and to their families? And so it's been really, I can literally see AT&T's headquarters right outside of my building here. It's beaming me in the face with light. And just looking at what companies like AT&T are doing to make sure that students have access. And so anyway, all to say that I'm a big advocate for inclusion and diversity in my own organizations. And now I'm just figuring out how to leverage the virtual nature of things to expand that even further.
Great. Mark, what about you?
Well, as you can tell, I'm the most diverse person on this panel. I mean, that's obvious to everybody. I don't know what the opposite of diversity is, but I certainly fall in that category. But because of that, I feel very strongly about this. And all joking aside, I'm a very vocal and very stringent advocate of building diversity for both BIPOC and really anybody that's underestimated in the marketplace. I think that there's an enormous amount of opportunity for the people that have traditionally not had a voice or a seat at the table to get that voice now. We're seeing a lot of initiatives. One of the bigger and more viable ones is based here in Austin, but moving to Houston very shortly. It's called Div Inc., the Diversity Accelerator, which I think everybody here is involved with or knows about. I've been a very proud mentor there since they started, and really excited to see their expansion. We've got obviously Notley itself with what Aisha is doing, helping diversity candidates grow with their fellowships and other initiatives. The fact is that it's certainly not in Austin. Austin looks a lot more like me than other cities, but in Houston in particular, I mean, it is a very, very diverse city already. Now it's a matter of making sure that those diverse candidates get the access they need. And that is specifically what Heath's doing with some of his programs, most importantly, his Urban Capital Network, which I hope we'll discuss soon.
Yeah. Great, Marcus. Maybe a great segue. I appreciate that. In
I like the
Houston,
softballs.
in Houston, what's really interesting is when you think about Houston's assets, people think about energy, they think about healthcare, maybe biotech, but really it's our diversity, right? And we have an opportunity now that I think Houston has the chance to lead. And the current climate in the country really gives Houston a chance to show what it's all about and show what we have here and how we can drive, not just diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, but also, given that we're the energy capital of the world, climate tech, as it's being referred to, and other ESG related initiatives and components. We actually believe here at Mercury Fund that more and more companies like AT&T and the things they're doing, as well as startups, as well as venture firms like us, are going to do more to not just call out ESG and DE&I type initiatives, but make those things a basic fabric of who they are and how they operate. And in a way that it's just a part of their value system and a part of how they do business. And that's a good thing for everyone involved. There's some studies out there that talks about the impact of racism and the increase in GDP of fully enabling, the African American community into the economy and what that looks like. A great study from McKinsey. Be happy to make sure you guys have that to send out to all of your relationships. From a specific investment perspective, and what we're factoring into our thesis at Mercury Fund is that in this COVID, protests, climate change environment, we think those things are going to drive deals. We think capital and talent are going to continue to move away from the coast and move towards communities that are embracing those things. As we already see lots of talent moving to Austin and other parts of Texas from both coasts. We think this whole notion of work from home is here to stay. As Mark is saying, Mark, I think Houston may have overtaken Austin as the number one place, at least in Texas, through COVID, because of all of the companies here. But definitely Austin's leading in that space of how to do it. And I know one company in our portfolio, and that's headquartered in Austin. They have their lease ended at the end of Q3, and they've permanently gone to work from home. So we think that is going to drive a lot of activity and engagement to this new normal that we believe is going to exist. And we're shifting our thesis and our themes to sort of focus on that new world. And we also think that the layoffs that have occurred are going to drive more people to launch startups, which we're really excited about. So we think both the increase in inclusivity, the increase in ESG adoption, and the post-COVID new normal will create a tremendous upside for opportunities in Texas and specifically here in Houston.
Yeah. Keith, you bring up a great point. I was reading not too long ago a presentation from Southwest Angel Network where they had talked about the trends that have happened with the last recession that we went through, and kind of all of the innovation that was bred out of that. And I recently have launched an angel network for women-founded companies based in Texas in the last month. And so I have seen that trend as well, which is super exciting. And I think that it's a unique opportunity for making lemonade out of lemons. So very exciting there. One thing I wanted to talk about is because we are all very clearly passionate about Texas and making sure that Texas is becoming the #1 state in the country to create startups and build businesses. So what is lacking right now in the Texas startup ecosystem, in your opinion, and what are ways that we all can improve and make sure that we're moving in the right direction? Mark, I'll go with you first.
So the obvious answer that everybody's going to say is money, but that's actually not the right answer. So I'm going to dive in and be a little contrarian here. The biggest thing that Texas is lacking, and this is true of all the major cities, and I've actually seen this the most in Houston, is our lack of mentors. We don't have enough people who have been there and done that and have the ability to both teach and the desire to go and teach other startups how to run businesses. Heath and I have been active mentors for as long as I can remember. I just feel very strongly that the pool of qualified mentors, which really powers every major incubator accelerator program, is actually very small. Heath mentioned there's a number of different incubator accelerator programs now in Houston, which is great. I would be very curious to see how many mentors there are, because the fact is that most mentors, myself included, I think there's 21 separate incubator accelerator programs in the Austin area. And I think I'm involved with the super majority of them. I don't think I'm involved with the biosciences one and the fashion one for obvious reasons. But other than that, I do it. The fact is, I feel very, very strongly we need to get corporate executives, people who have grown up in large corporations and fast growth businesses, and I don't want to mention names, but Insperity comes to mind, that actually have a very, very, very strong focus on startups that will be able to bring that knowledge and those learnings back to the startups. So to make a very long story short, we need more mentors.
And Christiana, you mentioned earlier, these innovation arms bred out of some of the corporates based in Dallas. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I've been interested to watch some of the larger companies invest in growing startups that are, expanding rapidly or coming up with innovative products. I will say that Dallas is actually doing some good work when it comes to mentorship, but I think a lot of it has to do with personal passion and dedication to it, and being able to connect with the people who want to dedicate their time. Something that I struggled with early on in the Dallas startup community was finding out who was a true entrepreneur and who was a wantrepreneur. It's not hard in Texas or in Dallas. I'll speak about Dallas specifically. It's not difficult to create a name for yourself. It's not difficult to get the press. There's actually a lot of really great media companies who just love a great story, so they'll pick anything up. What's more challenging is really navigating who's really done the hard work, and also, finding people who are personally passionate about giving back because it's the right thing to do, not because it's what's expected of them. So I think finding those right mentors is going to be a challenge. It's not a lack of programs, it's navigating and playing that matchmaker for aligning mentors with the right experience and the right passion to the right startups. And so in some of the challenges I experienced when selling a very small, lean startup to a legacy health system was who to talk to, the legal side of it, what questions to ask, who's done it before. And at that time, no one had. So it was very difficult to align with the right advisory teams. And unfortunately, that deal it would be an exciting burst of good news for Dallas, and then that company doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer innovating and doing the things we loved as a young startup. So I think had we been in touch with people who weren't just in it to associate themselves with us and more to provide true mentorship and advisory, not services, but real advice and guide us in the right direction, maybe we wouldn't have been in the same situation. And so I don't think it's a lack of programs. I think it is going to be a lack the challenge will be finding people who are interested in doing it for the right reasons. And like I said, because it's the right thing to do, not just because it's a nice thing to add to your LinkedIn.
It's a great point. And I love the phrase "wantrepreneur." I'm adding that to my vocabulary.
Oh no, I kind of hate the word, but I always talk about that. It's not difficult, and I'm speaking from experience. It's not 5 years ago. I was the person asking for all of the advice of where to go for startup events and where to go to find a mentor, and asking all these questions. And it didn't take long for me to become the person that everyone came to for that. So it just shows that it's not difficult to stay connected, but to stay true to the community, to stay out of trouble, to stay a positive light in the community. That's hard work. And I really want to shine light on those that are doing some great things. And like I said, I've been able to stay connected to some of the community leaders that really guided me through my first experience in the startup world to now. And I can still rely on them for support.
Yeah. That's great. And Heath, what about you? What is Houston or Texas lacking, in your opinion, that we can improve on?
Yeah, Mark brought up two really good points. He didn't hit the capital much at all, which everyone would agree is much needed. And he definitely pushed on the mentors, and that mentor category sort of spills into the talent that we're missing, right? I think more talent, and the key to that really is more exits. I think Houston needs some exits because what happens when a company exits is that those employees, if there's a stock lockup or whatever that sort of transition period is, all of that talent flows into the ecosystem, and that talent can now go on to other companies, and that talent can do the mentoring Mark's talking about. One of the ways we are focused on that, Mark mentioned Urban Capital Network earlier, and I glossed over it, but so I'm a co-founder of Urban Capital Network, which is a DE&I platform, if you will, that connects angel investors and helps venture capital firms with their sort of DE&I efforts. We're bringing a lot of diverse angels to the table and getting them introduced to venture opportunities. And a lot of times they're coming from these professional organizations, the Fortune 1000 companies that Houston has or that Texas has. And diversity doesn't just mean ethnic diversity, but diversity of all kinds. And we are extremely focused on ethnic diversity to ensure that angel investors, especially new angel investors, understand what that means. And in some ways, it's a little anti-angel because we try to make their first engagement and opportunity with investing be something that's not necessarily first money in when you think about typical angel investing, such that we help them de-risk their first investments. We help them diversify those first investments, and we help them get in to really good deals at affordable levels in the $10,000 range, as opposed to $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. So it's a really good platform. We've got it off to a great start, and we're excited to continue to grow that. But taking those individuals that get involved, they now understand a little bit more, and typically they have some domain expertise that may not always be startup, but it's key expertise that can be utilized, and they can be someone that can be trusted for that particular sliver of information, expertise, and how to think through some of the functional areas that founders today don't always have, because the founders are getting younger and younger, and they don't have some of the scar tissue that all of us on this panel have around having to learn some things the hard way, and they can help out tremendously. So that's another way we sort of get to do it. But I think the biggest challenge that Houston has is that we need more exits, and there's hopefully there's some coming. There's companies like cPanel that many people don't even know that's here in Houston. High Radius, just landed a big round earlier this year. Cellugen was just recently in the paper. And then we've got other startups like Lion Guard that I was a part of from the beginning. So excited to see those guys grow. Decisio Health, Graylog, which is a Mercury portfolio company. And, we're just excited about a lot of those. And then the last point I'd make is sometimes we end up losing opportunities because we don't have the right talent. And that's why we need these exits. Apartment Butler, which is now Spruce, had to move to Austin because they couldn't find the executive talent they needed. And Houston has to be able to keep, we're happy that Austin got them and they didn't leave the state, but Houston has to be able to keep those companies in the future. And Ben would have loved to stay here, but he just couldn't build the right team here in Houston. And we need to prevent that from happening in the future. So I think the exits will get us the talent and the mentors Mark talked about, and hopefully the capital we need.
Great. And we have about 10 minutes left. So just wanted to wrap up with one last question, which is where do you see areas for collaboration between the three cities, the Texas Triangle, which I love that phrase. That's the first time I've heard that. But where are areas of collaboration that you see us all being able to make an impact in so that we can make sure to strengthen kind of this triangle region here?
Well, I have a couple of very specifics and I'll get out of the way, I promise. So obviously this kind of panel, Austin Startup Week, and Christiana mentioned this, it doesn't really matter. We all four could be on Mars right now and having the same conversation. This is the silver lining of COVID. We're all at home. Even though we all have Zoom fatigue, we can all collaborate much more easily than we did before. And the fact is, even though Texas is a big state, We've got Von Lane. We've got things like Southwest Airlines. We can get to other cities very, very quickly and now very cheaply. And I spend a lot of time going back and forth Houston to Austin, and I do spend a little bit of time going from Austin to Dallas. It's not that hard. And when COVID opens up and allows us to do it, I think it's going to be a lot easier to do that because we'll have these connections and we'll just be enforcing them. But large events, digital events like this, Austin Startup Week, Dallas Startup Week, Houston Tech Rodeo coming up in February, events like this, everybody who lives in Texas should be involved, not just people who live in those single cities, Another thing that I'm very strongly about is our Facebook groups and Slack channels. We have Texas Startups that I help manage, Houston Startups, which I help start, Dallas DFW Startup Community is there. And we've said the triangle a number of times. I think we made a grave mistake. We missed something, and we missed San Antonio, and we really can't sleep on San Antonio. San Antonio is the ninth largest city in the United States. San Antonio is incredibly strong in things like cybersecurity. Rackspace is based there. I don't want to think because nobody's from San Antonio, we're not thinking about them on this panel. It really is very, very interesting. And what they're doing with Geekdom and a few other corporations in the San Antonio area is something we should definitely be aware of.
It'll be the Texas parallelogram.
That's right. That's right.
That's exactly. I was trying to picture which shape we would be in San Antonio. That's right.
I think along these lines, one of the things Capital Factory is doing a really good job of is I forget exactly what they call it, Mark, but they bring the busload of mentors and advisors into Houston on a quarterly basis, or at least a couple of times a year. I know that through 2019. They did it really effectively. I think doing more of that, especially when you start to look at whether it be bringing in more capital of people that are looking for opportunities, but that's a really good way to do it. And the fact that Capital Factory is now kind of expanded into Houston, present in Dallas and in San Antonio. It's really good to have groups like that can leverage their infrastructure to sort of make these collisions happen. So more things like that are really good, as well as being able to have these digital events, like Mark said, would be the things I think about around collaboration.
And before you get into it, Christian, that's called the Texas Startup Roadshow, and I've been on all but 2 of them, and they are phenomenally fun. They're enjoyable. You get to meet and connect. By the way, not just mentors to startups, and this is the most important thing in my opinion. You actually get to meet mentors to mentors.
Agreed.
And having those mentor to mentor conversations is how communities really build the glue to grow the companies out there. And I think we should have a lot more of those collaborations as well. Like I promised to get out of the way, but go ahead, Christiana.
So you've got good info. We're not mad at you for sharing those nuggets. For me, it's all about I always talk being a megaphone for good news, things like great newsletters and publications about what's happening in Texas. I think will shed some good light on how we're collaborating and maybe put some shine some light on how we're not. Are there missed opportunities where we've got a disconnect between industries? I mean, Dallas is a great hub for healthcare, but Houston's a better one. Same thing with Austin when it comes to other elements of tech. What are we doing to communicate those needs and how are we sharing them? I'm a big advocate for Facebook groups and the Slack channels, but I want others to hear about it. I want people who are in and out of the startup community to hear about what's happening. And I think it'll start to foster good conversation about what can be done and maybe inspire some other companies to, I keep mentioning these big companies investing in these spaces. Maybe it'll shed some light on what's being done in a positive way, and then show the rest of the world how we're really making a name for ourselves right here in Texas. So it's all about communication and collaboration for me, and sharing of resources, and then blasting that through a megaphone for everyone to hear about and feel encouraged by.
That's great. So I barely left time for Q&A. I apologize, but one question did come through the chat, which is if you want to donate your time as a mentor, where's a good place to start? You mentioned Texas Startup Roadshow, Capital Factory. Are there other opportunities that you all see in your cities for that?
Yeah, definitely in Houston. I'd say from depending on how you want to spend your time. On the medical side, we talked about TMCX and their programs. On the inclusivity side, you've got Div Inc., Impact Hub, which is doing some really good work under the leadership of Grace Rodriguez. And Generator has their program here, which was backed by the city of Houston. So those are all great programs. And then the Houston Exponential launched the HX Tech Connect and Tech List. And that is a great opportunity to get engaged in everything Houston. So that's a good place to start. You can go to houstonexponential.org, and that's a good place to go from there.
I can make mine super fast, and it's called the Fast Start Mentoring Program that's hosted here in Dallas by the DEC Network. It was a great way to be basically a matchmaker for me and several young entrepreneurs to support them through some marketing campaigns and different things. So the Fast Start Mentoring Program here in Dallas.
Mark?
Literally dozens in Austin, but the two easiest and most obvious are Capital Factory and Techstars Austin.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining and answering questions today. Next time I'll leave more time for Q&A, but would love to connect with you all after this. If there are ways that people can connect with you, whether that's through social media or email or otherwise, do you want to shout those out really quick before we wrap up?
Heath@mercuryfund.com.
There you go. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Christiana Yabra on LinkedIn. Instagram is fine too, or cy@tryvouchapp.com.
Google Mark, M-A-R-C 1919. Mark 1919 is every one of my social media accounts.
I love that. Brand recognition. And my name is Aisha Lewis again. You can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily as well. I'm one of many, but the only one in Austin. So thank you all for joining today and really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was great. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all so much. We really appreciate it. I can't wait to hear more about the Texas parallelogram in the future. So next up, we have networking. Next up we have networking, where you'll get to network with other attendees. To do that, press the networking icon on the left-hand side of your screen. You'll be randomly paired with another attendee and have 5 minutes to chat with one another. If you want to continue your conversation after your session, click the connect button at the bottom of your screen. So go out, meet amazing people, and we'll see you back here at 11:45 for our last bonus session of the day.